Completely useless, my father growled, tossing my medical school acceptance letter onto the kitchen counter. 5 more years of school when you could be running the family business. What's wrong with you, Sophia? I stood in our sprawling kitchen, hands trembling but my voice firm. I want to be a surgeon, Dad. That's always been my dream. A surgeon. From his perch on the granite countertop, my brother Alex scoffed. You can barely handle a paper cut. The hardware stores need someone who actually knows business. Mom remained silent at the table, folding and refolding her napkin, avoiding my gaze the entire time. Our family has owned Anderson Hardware for 3 generations, Dad continued, his face flushed. Your grandfather built this from scratch, and now you're willing to abandon it for some pipe dream? I drew in a steadying breath. I'm not abandoning anything. I just want to. To what? Alex interrupted. Waste more money on med school applications. How much did you spend this time? I paid for them myself, I said softly. Every single application. Dad snorted bitterly. With what money? The trust fund we gave you. The car. The roof over your head. I lifted my chin. With the money I earned volunteering in the hospital ER. I've been there for 2 years, and they started paying me 6 months ago. Oh, fantastic, Alex said sarcastically. My sister, the minimum wage hospital orderly. Truly living the dream. Sophia, that's enough. Mom finally spoke, her voice tight. Your father is right. This medical school nonsense has to stop. We need you here. I stared at her in disbelief. You mean you need me to abandon my dreams for a business I don't care about? Dreams don't pay bills, Dad snapped. The company is struggling. We need everyone here, not some selfish kid chasing fantasies. I'm not being selfish, I said. I want to help people. To save lives. Enough, Dad shouted, shaking the windows. I'm done talking. Either you commit to the family business, or you're on your own. No trust fund, no support, nothing. Silence fell over the kitchen. Alex's smirk widened as he watched me struggle. I've already accepted the offer, I said quietly. Classes start next month. Dad's face turned a deep shade of purple. Then leave, Sophia. Mom started to speak, but he cut her off. Fine. Pack your bags. You're no longer welcome here. I froze, caught between their fury, her avoidance, and Alex's delight. These were supposed to be my family, my support system. You have an hour, Dad said coldly. Take what you can carry. The rest goes to charity. Upstairs in my room, the Johns Hopkins acceptance letter remained clutched in my hand, now slightly crumpled from Dad's grip. I had been so excited to show them, so certain they'd be proud. How foolish I'd been. I grabbed my largest suitcase and began packing. Clothes, essential documents, a small box of my late grandmother's jewelry, the one person who had always encouraged my medical dreams. You're really doing this? Alex appeared in the doorway. Choosing some stupid dream over your family. I'm not choosing a dream, Alex, I said, methodically packing. I'm choosing my future over fear. There's a difference. You'll fail, he said with confidence. You'll be back in a month, begging for forgiveness. I zipped up the suitcase and faced him. Funny thing is, everyone in this family is so obsessed with preserving the past that they can't see the future. Anderson Hardware is failing because none of you are willing to change. And now you're trying to make the same mistake with me. His smug grin wavered for a moment. Downstairs, Dad waited by the front door, Mom conspicuously missing. The car stays, he said flatly. It's still in the family name. Fine. I pulled out my phone and summoned an Uber. This is your last chance, Sophia, he warned as I passed him. Hey, work in the business. Be part of this family. I paused on the front steps of the home I'd grown up in. I am part of this family, Dad. You're the one choosing money and control over me. You're choosing to walk away, he snapped. No, I replied, strangely calm. I'm choosing to become who I'm meant to be. And someday, you'll need me far more than I'll ever need you. The Uber arrived in our circular driveway. As I loaded my suitcase, I felt Dad's eyes on me from the doorway. Just before climbing in, I turned for one final shot. "By the way," I called, "Anderson Hardware isn't struggling because of the economy. It's failing because your online competitors offer better prices and actual customer service. If only you ever listened to anyone else's ideas." Then I slid into the car, leaving behind everything familiar for everything I hoped to become. The acceptance letter remained clutched in my hand. I smoothed it out as we drove away. "Where to?" the driver asked. I gave him the address of the small apartment I'd secretly rented with my hospital savings. "Not as unprepared as they think," I murmured. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my expression in the rearview mirror. I nodded, watching my childhood home shrink behind us. "I will be." Being called useless sometimes fuels the drive to become extraordinary. 10 years blurred past in a whirlwind of rotations, sleepless nights, and endless surgeries. I worked my way through medical school, taking extra hospital shifts to cover expenses. Every time exhaustion hit, every time doubt crept in, I heard Dad's voice. "You're useless to this family." Those words became fuel during my residency at Johns Hopkins, where I graduated at the top of my class. They pushed me through my cardiothoracic fellowship, where I developed a groundbreaking minimally invasive technique that garnered national attention. At 35, I now stood in my office at Manhattan Memorial Hospital, reading the updated nameplate. Dr. Sophia Anderson, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. "Dr. Anderson," my assistant called, knocking at the door. "The board meeting is about to start." I straightened my white coat and gathered my files. A decade had passed since I'd last spoken to my family. Occasionally, I'd hear about Anderson Hardware, store closures, declining sales, and the slow adaptation to online retail they'd stubbornly resisted. The board meeting proceeded as usual until the chief of medicine spoke. "As you all know, Manhattan Memorial is merging with 3 regional hospitals. Dr. Anderson will oversee the standardization of cardiac care across all sites." A rush of pride hit me. My techniques, which had reduced recovery times and saved countless lives, would now become the standard across multiple hospitals. After the meeting, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Dr. Anderson speaking," I said. "Sophia," a hesitant voice said. "Familiar." My hand tightened around the phone. "What is it?" I asked. "It's your father," she said, voice trembling. "He's had a heart attack. The doctors recommend emergency bypass surgery, but there are complications. They suggest transferring him to Manhattan Memorial." The irony wasn't lost on me. Manhattan Memorial, my hospital, my domain. "Does he know you're calling me?" asked, voice sharp. "No," she admitted quietly. "He's unconscious. Sophia, please. The doctors here say you're the only one who can do this. If anyone can save him, it's you." I closed my eyes, recalling the last time I'd seen my father. "Send his medical records to my office. I'll review everything immediately." An hour later, I stood in the emergency department as the ambulance arrived. Alex barged through the doors first, older but still radiating that same arrogance. He froze when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "My job," I replied evenly, checking Dad's vitals as he was lifted onto the gurney. "I'm the chief of cardiothoracic surgery." Shock, disbelief, and finally dawning realization crossed Alex's face. Before he could speak, Mom appeared, breathless. "Sophia," she whispered, taking in my white coat and the respectful deference of the staff. You really did it." One of my residents interrupted. "The ore is ready." I nodded and began walking beside my father's gurney. Mom reached for my arm. "Wait, we need to talk about this. Your father wouldn't want." "What my father wants," I cut her off, "is to live. Right now I'm his best shot at that. If you'll excuse me, I have surgery to perform." "You can't operate on him," Alex protested. "Too what?" asked sharply. "Too useless. Too incapable. I'm the top cardiac surgeon in the region, Alex." The technique we're using today, I developed it. The published research on his condition, I wrote it. The residents tried to hide their smiles. My reputation was well known, and watching their chief confront her past was better than any television drama. At the hors d'oeuvres, I glanced back at my family. You can wait in the consultation room. Someone will update you every hour. Sophia, Mom called softly as I scrubbed in. We misjudged you so badly. I caught her reflection in the hors window. Yes, you did. Now, if you'll excuse me, this so-called useless daughter has a life to save. The hors lights shone brightly as I stepped inside. On the table lay my father, the man who had thrown me out, who had labeled me worthless, who had tried to crush my ambitions. Scalpel, I said calmly, extending my hand. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's being so competent that they have no choice but to trust you with their life. 8 hours later, I entered the consultation room where my family waited, anxious and tense. The surgery was successful, I reported. We performed a quadruple bypass using my minimally invasive technique. Recovery will take several weeks, but the outlook is very positive. Mom wept openly. Alex slumped in his chair, relief etched on his face. He's in recovery now, I continued. You'll be able to see him briefly in about an hour. As I turned to leave, Mom called out, Sophia, when he wakes up. When he wakes up, I interrupted. He'll be in the hands of the best cardiac team in the hospital. Not because he's my father, but because that's what we do. That's what this so-called useless daughter built. I walked out, white coat swishing behind me, picking up the next case file at the nurse's station. Life moved forward, and there were more hearts to save. 3 days later, my father opened his eyes to see me checking his vitals. You, he whispered hoarse. Hello, Dad, I said, making notes. I'm Dr. Anderson, your surgeon. And as it turns out, I'm far from useless. I left the room, head held high. Sometimes the sweetest victories are the ones that hit closest to home, like saving the life of someone who once tried to destroy yours. In my office, surrounded by my publications, awards, and patents, I smiled, remembering his words from 10 years ago. Being called useless had turned out to be the best motivation I ever had.